Okay, we're back. That was quick. Let's do a quick wrap up and recap what we did today. So a quick reminder of where we've been today. So we started this morning with cyber infrastructure user support. We had a panel on that, and then we had the intake interview session, which was very interesting and productive, both for us and for the researchers who volunteered to help us practice our intake interviews. Then this afternoon, we had assessing and anticipating researcher needs, and now broadening the constituency via outreach and communication. And I was wondering if we could zoom out a little bit and maybe people can volunteer sort of some general principles or observations that they derived from the sessions today. They don't have to be a theme shared by all the sessions. It can be from individual sessions, but something that you discovered or learned or had reinforced today that you found very valuable. And you can either put it in the chat or dive in by voice.
I got so much work to do to build something credible.
Are you talking about in order to catch up with your peers at other institutions?
Yes, basically. I mean, one man showing it has its constraints. You've heard the story before. Other people have been there before.
Yeah, well, so I think we all kind of go through that to some extent. As I mentioned yesterday, you know, anytime I go to a conference, I always come away from every session with exactly the same feeling as what you just described. But the flip side of that is it's more important to be heading in the right direction than it is to have arrived at the destination. So I generally look at, are we doing the right things to get things going in the right direction, and not so much are we where we need to be, because the reality is the floor keeps moving under our feet anyway. We'll never get to where we're supposed to be or where we need to be, but we can get closer to it. What do other people think about that? I'm noticing a lot of agreement in the chat.
Hey, Henry, it's Marisa. I just want to say +1 on that, because even though we're trying to do all of the things, you never stop learning. And I think one of the most impactful things for me has been learning from all of you and seeing what's worked well and what hasn't, and then attending these sessions and talking to people. And you know, it's constantly changing.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And I think we're all going through the same thing. If anybody happens to meet a research computing facilitator who is already where they need to be and already doing all the things they should be doing, let us know, because I haven't yet met a unicorn and I would enjoy doing that.
Sure, I am.
Yeah, I think that creating a balance, Henry, is key, right, for all our institutions. You know, sometimes we think that the grass is greener on the other side, but, you know, it's about the audience that you have, your institution, what are the real needs, and balancing that with the expertise and the domain expertise that you have, right? If you are lacking, then trying to add a little bit more. It might not be that you can add, you know, 5 people at the same time, but if you can add one, you know, at the time with some expertise that, you know, you are lacking in the community, then I think it's one way to get started. But creating the balance, I think that is key.
Just to add a little bit, I think including and leaning on the research community themselves as well, asking them to participate in things like this. I forgot feedback from today from the people I asked to help. That they loved it and they would like to continue helping. So that's awesome. And so like other things too, of just creating advocates for them to help go to bat for you sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And somebody mentioned earlier, and I think it's absolutely true, word of mouth from people, from researchers who you've served well is absolutely invaluable. And whether you see it or not, word of mouth is happening. It's way better if it's happening in a positive, happy way, but it's happening. You can be absolutely certain of that. One thing we know from sometimes happy and sometimes painful experience, faculty talk to each other. In fact, they're on committees with each other all the time, and mixes that you wouldn't predict. They know each other well, and if something goes well, they tell each other about it, and if something goes badly, they tell each other about it. I see a wonderful thing in the chat. David just said, we need a whole conference on collaboration between research computing and libraries. And I was going to jokingly say, David, you mispronounced I volunteer to found a conference on collaboration between research computing and libraries, but I'm not sure that that's what you mispronounced. And Dana said something about, I'm lucky to have one foot in each world, on the library side and on the research computing side. Do you want to take a moment and talk about that, about the relationship between the two that you're experiencing?
Sure. When I was in grad school getting my library science degree, I met Heidi Imker, who was the head of the brand new research data service. And I said, I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to do something so that I can work with this woman. I have to make that happen in my life. So I was looking for a practicum location. One of her employees, she had a staff of 2, was going out on maternity leave. So I'm like, okay, I will be your, sort of sidekick helper of plugging the gap while that maternity leave is going on, and I'll get some credit out of it, and you'll get a bridge to tech services. And when that was over with, she said, this is so useful, we can't stop. We can't stop this. I don't care if you're done with your practicum, we're going to keep this going. So for the past 5 years, I've been 1 foot in tech services, 1 foot in the library. So I bring back to tech services, this is what people out on campus are doing and running into, and here's what they're asking about, and here's what they're trying to do with our services. And I take from tech services to the library, here are the tools that we've got available that it's not your job to know about, it's my job to know about because I run them. It's my job to tell you, here are cool tips and tricks and ways that you can make these people's lives easier with drag and drop interfaces that are already out there that, you just haven't needed to dig into yet. And it's been incredibly, incredibly useful. I also discovered from watching a presentation, I saw the change in background from a Windows screenshot to a Mac screenshot at one point in presentation. I asked questions that led to discovering that the reason that that background had changed was because someone was doing part of their work on their personal computer, uploading it to the Blue Waters supercomputer, and they had 48 hours to get it off of the supercomputer, but they had nowhere to put it because some of their collaborators from China, so they were FTPing it over to the personal desktop of someone in Louisiana because they couldn't find anything else where the storage was allowed to take place that was also accessible from China. Like, okay, this is a problem we are going to solve for you. And I would never have discovered that if I had not been there in that meeting with the library folks watching that presentation. You got to have somebody who spends time in both worlds.
You're putting an idea into my head, and I may even know how to implement it. And I kind of now, my fingertips are getting a little itchy to give it a try. And we're gonna wrap the week up because I don't want to start a new project while we're running the workshop. But I've got this thought in my head about how we might be able to do that here, and I'm very excited to propose it to my boss and see if he'll be interested in pursuing it.
I'm also not the only one. We've also had a part-time use of the talents of one of the engineering web hosting folks, and without her we would never have been able to launch the campus cPanel server on time, because she had the expertise with cPanel because they'd been using it for years, but they couldn't scale it up to the campus level. And we had the staff, but no experience with cPanel. So like chocolate and peanut butter opportunities are out there when you get the right person bridging those gaps. You just got to get the permission from the higher level management to be able to do it, because like 5 to 10 years ago, the answer would have been, oh, we can't possibly do that because of funding lines. I heard that answer from somebody 5 to 10 years ago. And then my boss let me do it because of the practicum. And from then on, life got much better.
So I see a question in the chat from Lane about if we've got a long run to start on, what's the best way to approach it from a leadership viewpoint? 1 or 2 key projects per year? How do we avoid not providing existing service while attempting to make things better? And that last question we've certainly been juggling here, because we're trying to do 4 major projects at the same time on very constrained timelines, but we can't in the meantime blow everybody off because they've got to get their work done too. There isn't a good answer to that question. The best we've been able to do is we have to prioritize the current needs, in the sense that if people stop being productive, they will drift away anyway, and we'll lose them forever. So we've got to keep them productive while we're developing the new things. And if that means the new things take longer to deploy, that's the price we pay, because what's not going to happen is we're not magically going to double the size of our staff.
Let me throw one more in there. We have had a whole lot of success with Create This days, where, I mean, if you think about it, you've got to be able to cover when somebody goes out on vacation, right? Get your strike team together of these 5 people need to be in this room, and just put a whole day of their brains without interruptions on that project. We got the first draft of our campus service catalog out in 4 hours when we thought it was going to take, 2 to 3 months the traditional way, because we had the right people in the room who knew what needed to happen and just brainstormed it and bashed it together. You can get a whole lot done when you get the opportunity to focus. And when you think about it in terms of, if you can cover a vacation, you can cover this, I feel like it's a trade worth making.
I keep a hawk's eye on new service ideas to make sure they won't require ongoing support, because that can really reduce support bandwidth. I think that's a really good point. And I think you have to balance that against, if we're not creating new capabilities that are addressing evolving researcher needs, then we're going to lose them, because they're going to drift away to whoever can provide for those needs. And that is a very tough balance to strike, particularly when I think most of our organizations have very limited labor pools. There just aren't enough people for all of the great things that our researchers need. And we can do any of those things, but we can never do all of those things. And how do we balance those? That's a really tricky question. I do, however, believe that you can't just continue providing the same things well, because if you keep providing just the same things well, A, you don't address the needs of the additional folks, or the folks whose needs have evolved away from those same things. And B, after a while, it looks easy. And if it looks easy, you're fired. And that's in some sense paradoxical and counterintuitive. But if it looks easy, they figure, oh, we don't need that many people to provide this thing that's easy to provide. We can do this for a lot less cost for the exact same thing. And that's not the reality. It takes an enormous amount of work. My usual rule of thumb is it takes 10 times as much labor to make something twice as good. But that's incredibly difficult to explain to others, especially if they're not in the middle of it, which usually the decision makers are not in the middle of it.
One more thought. Make sure that you give everybody something that actually solves the entire problem rather than 75% of the problem. cPanel was amazing. It had a lot of uptake, but we had been asked before and after, look, I just need a one button click way of installing something that looks like the university campus. And for years, we were saying, we can't give that to you. We don't have a designer and we're not approved to do it. Well, a coalition, the willing, got together and we have finally done it. And it has been phenomenally helpful in terms of now people just go, they install the thing and they have something that looks like the university stuff right out of the box. And so the number of people who are no longer going off to Squarespace to get something that looks nice, or having to go pay $2,000 to $3,000 to a designer to make something that takes the campus brand standards and reinvents it for 5 times for WordPress and 5 times for Drupal. It has really been worth the investment of doing it.
More questions? All right, well, since it's quiet, I'll assume we're wrapping it up. So let's do that, and we'll give y'all 12 minutes of your life back. And we're reconvening tomorrow. Real quick summary of tomorrow. We start with components of a research computing resource. Then we've got facilitating cloud computing, deciding which technologies to adopt and when, and then research data management. Very exciting program for tomorrow. Really looking forward to it. And of course, you can expect to get the emails for each of these sessions. So we'll look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. See you bright and early in the morning.